Data tables. Data tables are different than filter tables, and they're different than pivot tables. What they are is a way to do one task very quickly. For example here, I've got this information about a loan. And I got, 5%, 10 years, $32,000 or so, and my monthly payment is $341. 71. Okay. Well, say if I have a budget of $400 that I can spend to buy a new car or whatever, right? Then I can say, well, I can borrow more money than that, and so I could change this to something else, or the interest rates go up and down. So let's say, well, let's just stay with interest rates for this one. Right? So that's what they are today. If they go down a bunch or they go up a bunch, what's they going to do to my payment? So being the kind of guy I am, I would copy that, and I would store that in here, like that, and then I could change this to 4%, and that changes that number here, and so on, right? And I could just fill that whole thing in. So then I'd have this handy little guide here to tell me what's going to happen if interest rates fluctuate. Well, I could do that, and that's going to take me, I don't know, a minute or two to get done, but it's not very fine-grained because, interest rates could go up by a quarter or even 0.05%. So what I really would like is a bigger table, and I keep forgetting this. So over here, I'm just going to highlight that whole thing and get rid of it. That's the way it's supposed to look. Sorry about that. Okay. Is there some systematic way to do this so I don't have to do a lot of copy and pasting? Well, yes, there is. What you do is you create a little table like this with the various interest rates you're interested in looking at. At the top of the next column, you point back to the cell that you're interested in keeping track of, which happens to be the monthly payment. And now we're done, essentially. Starting with the cell that has rate in it, that yellow cell there, I'm just going to highlight both columns down like that. Then I'm going to go to the data tab on the ribbon. And then on that, over towards the right, it says what if analysis. And we want the one that says data table. Okay. So now, in this case, we have a one-way data table, and we have to tell it where to look for its inputs. So what we're essentially telling it, we have this column of inputs. Where should they go into this model that we created over here? And that, so we pick the column input cell, and that just happens to be where the rate is. And then I just say, okay, and I'm done. So this is a much faster way to do this. In fact, if I went 3.1, 3.2, and so on, it would take me virtually no more time than it did to do this one. So, if I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of tens of thousands of dollars, a fluctuation of 0.1% is a big change in payments, right? So, we could do that sort of stuff. All right, so anyway, that's all it does. So questions about it so far? Okay, a couple of things you should know. This is no longer ordinary cells. This is part of the table, so it switched to table notation, which is a small point. The bigger point is, since this is now a object, you can't insert rows or columns into it. You can't change a particular cell in it. It's going to complain about that. So if you want to move that someplace, you've got to copy the whole thing. If it's not set up right, or you want to try a different model, you have to get rid of everything at once. You have to treat it as an object. Okay. Now scroll down a bit. You can do what's called a two-way data table. And now instead of just varying one factor, I'm going to look at different combinations of interest rate and loan amount. And so we can do that. We set this up however we want. We have a list of Here we have a list of interest rates. And they could be in any order you want. It doesn't matter. It's just because it's going to take each one of those and substitute into the model and run it and get the answer and copy it in here and all that sort of stuff. So they can be in descending order. They can be in random order. Generally speaking, they'll either be in ascending or descending order because then you can use that autofill. So you only have to type in 2 numbers and you're done, right? So up here, all I had to do was just do these 2 and just do this and I'm done. And I did the same coming down. Okay. Then in this upper left-hand cell, you need to point back to the cell that you're interested in tracking. Like that. And then you just highlight the whole thing again, starting with that, I don't know, brownish green cell I picked. And the row and column headers. Go back into what-if analysis. And data table. Row input cell. So here's my row of inputs, and those happen to be the interest rate, so I will just pick where they're supposed to go. Then I have a column of inputs, and those are the various loan amounts that I'm interested in looking at. So I pick where that is, and then I just say OK, and I'm done. So now this is much, much easier than going through and plugging in those various combinations of interest rate and loan amount, and then copying that into that cell. So I have a sensitivity table, as it's called. How sensitive am I to changes in these sorts of things? Okay. Now, with a two-way table, a common mistake is to put the row input where the column should be and vice versa. So whenever you do this sort of thing, what you should do is just pick some combination over here that's in your table. And I've already done that, 4 and 45,000. And this answer should match the answer that's in here. If it doesn't, that means you've got those in the wrong order, and you have to wipe it out and go back and swap them and put it back in again. Okay. Now with this thing here, this is really nice because now you can start asking, well, look, I can only afford to spend a certain amount on this loan because I got to eat, I got to have a place to stay, other expenses, stuff like that. So really, I can only spend like $450 or whatever. So then in here you could just do something like this and do some conditional formatting on it. Less than, and then I can pick a number here, 450 or whatever my budget calls for. And so there's combinations that match that budget. Okay. That's all it is. It's a simple trick, but it's a very nice trick because you can do all sorts of stuff with it. And again, this is a table, so you got to treat it as a whole. Any questions about this? All right. Your turn. And you've got a more practical problem ahead of you. A mythical course. It's the end of the semester. You've all done this. What do I have to get on the final exam to pass the course? Or what do I have to get a B+ or whatever, right? You've done that. I know you've done it. Everybody's done it. So we can set this thing up here, and we can do a one-way table here, and we can do this sort of stuff. Because you played around with this. You've punched different numbers into your calculator and tried this. But we can do this in a much more systematic way and a much quicker way to do that. So there's that one. Then when you get done with that one, the second one down here, it's a little earlier in the semester, and you still have a quiz and an exam left to take. Each one has a different weight and all that sort of stuff. And so you're trying to decide whether you should spend more time, studying this and that, different combinations and stuff. So you want to set that up as a two-way table. And then when you get that done, do some conditional formatting on it. All right, questions? Okay, go to it.